Former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, Princeton University political scientist, NewsNation political contributor Lauren Wright. Good to see both of you here. Danger and opportunity in crisis always, which I think both parties clearly are in. Do you see, either of you, leadership in either party that is willing to bring their party to the middle where the swing voters in Michigan across the country are?
Yeah, Leland, I just disagree with your thesis, with all due respect. I think
it wouldn't be fun if you agreed with it. So
yeah, there you go. First of all, El-Sayed, it's not fair to call him a terrorist sympathizer. That's inappropriate.
He refused to say that the Ayatollah is bad and it's good that the Ayatollah is dead.
Deepest respect. This whole game of trying to tie people to terrorism, he's a public health doctor who has helped to save lives in Michigan. He is not someone who supports terrorism. The fact he happens to be Muslim is not a reason you can tie him to terrorism. That's not why I did. The voters of Michigan made a decision after a very, very prominent, hard-fought campaign. He put his issues on the table, he won, and I think this is the point. People are upset with the status quo in this country. It's not working for the middle class. It's not working for the working class. And he said, get money out of politics, Medicare for all, higher wages, things that people are focused on. And that's where I think that swing vote is. By the way, Donald Trump got that kind of swing vote in 2024.
So you're proving my thesis.
No, I'm saying Donald Trump got that swing vote in 2024 because he spoke to what was wrong with the country. People were feeling the effects of inflation. They felt that the country was not serving them. So I don't think it's about this notion of people are looking for extremism. They want someone who is not part of the status quo, who is speaking to the kitchen table issues. That's why he won.
75% of Democrats say they would vote for a socialist for president. That's just a recent Washington Post polls. There are a dozen like that. I think the mayor is being much too kind to this guy. I don't think you or any responsible government official would say Israel and Hamas are on equal ethical footing. It's just a very controversial thing to say. And I will say you were a friend of Israel when you were mayor. I think the Jewish community loved you for that. And what Mamdani is doing and what El-Sayed is doing, playing footsie with really very extreme rhetoric, not to even mention the campaign staffers and donations, is very concerning. I think it's okay to say that.
Yeah, but something's changed since the time I left office in 2020.
Well, hold on.
They say the occupation has been happening for 59 years.
The politics have changed, but the morality of it has not. But we can sit here and debate El-Sayed all the time. I think there's a larger point that you brought up. And Lauren, I think this is the important one, which is there enough anger in America that people are willing to overlook what you and I agree about El-Sayed and vote for him because he's promising to deal with the issues the mayor talked about? This is Trump on Truth Social. Great news for the Republican Party. El-Sayed, a communist loser who hates Jews in Israel, is the projected winner in his race with the socialist. As usual, the polls were way off on this one. She was not expected to do nearly as well. Now the Democrats' crazy policies will only get worse. And that's the question. Is the message for Republicans out of this, hey, we don't have to do anything because people are going to be so turned off by El-Sayed?
Yeah, it's very cynical, and I would even say irresponsible, but Republicans are not inherently great people. They will stand by and watch this dumpster fire happen in the Democratic Party. Democrats have to fix it. They have to fight it out, and I hope they do. And, you know, for Trump, this is a layup. The only reason Republicans have any shred of hope in the midterms, whether it's probably not in the House, but in the Senate, is because of candidates like this, who, whether they call themselves socialists or not, agree with those policies on the DSA website. I don't have to list them. I know you know them by heart. And it's just not where the majority of Americans are.
No, wait. Hold on. That's not fair. That's not fair.
What's not fair?
Because, you know, I find...
It may not be fair, but it's accurate.
No, it's not accurate. That's the point. I find this fascinating thing on the right to list whatever obscure policy you can find in the DSA.
Obscure.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
Okay.
Take it. I was on Sean Hannity last night. He has his list from the DSA website. That's not how voters are thinking. First of all, it is a majority view, and this is what I'm saying, it's different than it was even 4 or 5 years ago. It is a majority view that Israel has done something profoundly bad in Gaza, and the majority of the American people do not support that, and they want to see change. But then go back to the economics. This is a kitchen table election. It's the economy, stupid. We knew that from a long time ago. Right. This is one, if ever there's been one.
So wait, just to finish.
Just to finish, Leland. The idea that people are wanting to talk about foreign policy or ideological position, That's not what this is about. They are voting for change, and they want Donald Trump's policies to be gone. He's at 30% approval.
Or they want Donald Trump's policies to work, or the Republicans to change. But there's 2 points here. One is, there was a time in America that a majority of Americans said that Jim Crow was good and that slavery was good. What you need is politicians who lead on moral issues, not follow the winds. And that's now becoming an issue for Democrats. Here's Bernie Sanders having to answer for Abdul El-Sayed and Hassan Piker.
One of the more controversial ones is that Piker has said America deserved 9/11. Are you comfortable with that association?
No, I am not. I think that's a dumb statement. On the other hand, he has a whole lot of followers, and there's a lot of things that he's saying that are making sense to a lot of people. I think, we have to get above cancel culture.
This did not work well for Republicans with Nick Fuentes, and they rightfully cut him out of the Republican Party. Why don't Democrats have to be held to the same standard?
I think we should be held to a standard of not just, as someone said, one stupid statement, which I also disagree with, but what is their basic view of the world? Piker, Bernie, a lot of progressive Democrats are talking about economic justice. They're talking about a system that is rigged and is hurting the everyday working American. Now, again, this is a majority view. This is what I think is being missed in this whole discussion. A few years ago, you might have said that sounds outlandish. But after what's happened in this economy, after tax cuts for the billionaires, after the inflation, everything else.
Turning America into Venezuela is not a majority view.
Oh, come on. This is also
tax cuts for billionaires.
Wait, just
what
hold on.
exactly were they?
The Trump tax cuts
made taxes more increased taxes by 6% on the top 10% of earners.
The Trump tax cuts said to America that the rich will get richer. And he's done it repeatedly. But this notion that anything that's going on is going to be like Venezuela or Cuba or Stalin's time is insane. These folks are talking about, the DSA members are by and large talking about social democratic policies you would find in many Western European nations. I want to get more on a quick final thought here. Because what the mayor's setting up is that there's an enormous opportunity for Republicans here to come to the center and to say to people who are rightfully angry and who feel left behind, who feel like the Trump policies have not worked for them, and say, we hear you, we understand, we're going to do better. We control the House, we control the Senate, and we control the White House. We can do better. And yet there is not a single Republican led by the president willing to do that. Why not?
The rules are just completely different. I do think the mayor would agree. We should be able to go through the GOP's policy platform and say what you agree with and what you don't, and you should look at the RNC and what they stand for, and you would say, Democrats, Republicans, look at that and make your decisions based on that.
You said I was right.
First of all, it's not about the policy platform. It's what campaign.
You just said no one's reading the DSA.
It's what people do in governance, their lead policies they achieve, and it's their lead things they talk about.
Hold on. You said I was right. Does that mean that Democrats are vulnerable if Republicans actually do what I said?
No, what it means to me is Republicans are absolutely structurally incapable of doing things that would address the needs of working class people. At this point, they've made a decision. They've cast their lot with the wealthy. They're not coming back from it. And Trump can't get out of his own way. Witness the war in Iran, which only made everyone
Why do Democrats have the majority of billionaire donors? Why do they have the college-educated rich voters? Republicans' party is hemorrhaging those people.
You and I would agree that our donor class is not leading us in the right direction. But what we're seeing at the grassroots is these progressive policies is what the people want.
Failed by the donor class of both.
Thank you.
You got to come to my class at Princeton.
I would be honored.
Okay.
Oh boy, then we're going to both have to. Then we're going to both have to listen to her. Then we have to actually take direction from the professor. Bill de Blasio, Professor Wright, thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.